Alright, hello there. It's time for another episode of Pokemon Red. Last episode we caught, I believe, 7 whole Pokemon, and now we're up to 115. Which is pretty impressive if I have to say so myself. Which obviously I do. I know what I'm talking about. So, this episode, what I want to do is do a few things. One thing I want to do, one thing I want to do is go back to Seafoam Island and grind a little bit. Now you may be thinking, well, why not grind in the Pokemon Mansion? And I actually want to do that too. But you see, I'm choosing the Seafoam Islands because practically everything there is water type. And this makes it a good training ground for my Venusaur. And that's who I want to train right now. So I don't have a lot to talk about right now. Essentially, lately, I haven't been doing too much of note. I mean, besides writing, I'm still writing, blah blah blah. You can pretty much assume that, as I said before. But pretty much nothing new, happens, sort of in general in my life, because I live a very, very boring life. I pretty much don't do anything unless it's with my wife. She's the social one, and that's not saying too much, because she's very not social, but compared to me, she's I don't even know of a good metaphor to use here, but take my word for it. She's a shy, nerdy type girl, and I'm even shyer than that. Let's just leave it at that. But anyway, we haven't been doing too much. There aren't really a lot of plans. I believe, last week we went to, or last weekend. Was it last weekend? It might have been the weekend before that. I don't even remember anymore. But we went to the Renaissance Fair. That was pretty cool. I feel like it was more. It was better the first time we went, but I think that might just be because this time we spent a little less time, and we had to sort of account for my wife's other friends who were there. And when you have more people, that can sometimes be a good thing, but it also means sometimes that everybody has to sort of agree on what to do, and hence what not to do. In general, I like my wife's friends, though. My friends are very few. That's about all I can say about that. I have very few friends. You could probably argue that many of the people I know through my wife are probably friends at this point, but I still feel like there's a certain threshold that a lot of them haven't passed yet, and I don't know when they would or how they would. It's just sort of a personal thing that's hard to explain. Let's just say I don't take the word friend very lightly. For me, it requires years and talking and constant talking. And this is for me, someone who barely talks at all. So yeah, we went to the Renaissance Fair. It's pretty cool to see the action, the play things. I'm not really sure what the proper word, the performances. I feel like that's the main draw of the Renaissance Fair for me. I mean, you could also say that just the general atmosphere is also cool, and yeah, it is. It's amusing to see all the different costumes that people dress up in and stuff. You see a lot of things that are dramatically anachronistic, like people in, for example, Buccaneer pirate suits, and I don't know. It's hard to explain, but you just see all sorts of things like that. And a lot of very, early medieval stuff that technically came before the Renaissance, and, all sorts of things. But, that's not really the point, how anachronistic it is. The point of the Renaissance Fair is just supposed to be kind of old-timey stuff, and melding it all together in a very slurious, illogical soup. I feel like I could better word that, but I'm not a poet, so whatever. I'm not quite sure what my plans are for this game, by the way. Like, obviously I plan on getting 151 Pokemon. Maybe even 2, if you count, Missing No or something. I actually am wondering how that works with Pokédex. Like, can you actually get 152? And if you catch other glitch Pokemon, does it go higher? I kind of doubt that for the latter statement, because when I caught the M Block Pokemon, the one that I used to evolve into Kangaskhan, it did not count as anything toward the Pokédex. I believe the other glitch Pokemon also work like that, except possibly Missing No. Because Missing No is a little special, in that it's like a stable glitch Pokemon. As far as I know, regular Missing No doesn't do anything bad to your game, except maybe mess with the Hall of Fame, and obviously give you 128 of your 6th item. Which, you know, for most people is totally a good thing. But it is still technically a glitch. M Block is, you know, the one that people get confused with Missing No, because it looks the same. But it has a different cry and is basically a different Pokemon. It just happens to share most of its traits with Missing No. And that one actually can mess up your game. You may recall in the episode where I caught it that I deliberately took out a Pokemon from my party and put it in the box, so that when I caught the M Block, you know, it would go straight to my party and not into my box. That's because if you catch M Block and try to take it out of a Pokemon box, it will just freeze your game. And that's not too much fun. And even then, that's one of the less egregious examples of the glitch Pokemon. The other ones, I believe, can be even worse. Like, they can permanently destroy your game, or, you know, corrupt data, or whatever. You know, a lot of them just freeze the game because of some move they learn or have or use. But I'm not an expert on this sort of thing. I actually never even delved that far into this thing. I just dealt with M Block and Missing No, and that was it for me. I of course saw those glitch trainers because I saw my brother fight them in his blue version. I realized, by the way, that I made a mistake when I referenced that before. I said something about there being a chef that you fight. It was actually a chief. And I guess when I was a little kid, I just thought it was chef because I couldn't read or whatever. Now, I realize some of you may be thinking, well, you don't really need to be doing this grinding, do you? And I pretty much agree with you. I do not doubt that if I went to the last gym as I was right now, I would probably win rather handedly. Or if not handedly, then pretty alright. I don't know that for certain, but I feel like it's pretty likely. That being said, I don't know. This is just sort of thing I always sort of did in RPGs. I sometimes sort of overgrinded a little bit, or not overgrinded, overleveled a little bit. Not too much usually, although I have done that in a few games, which I will point out if and when I get to them. But also, I feel like in this game, I'm sort of at a disadvantage because I did a lot of training for Pokemon that I decided not to use. And obviously that eats up a bit of your experience, because most of the experience you get, well, actually, maybe not most of the experience you get, but a lot of the experience you get is from trainers, and you only fight them once and then they're gone forever. So, at a certain point, you have to rely on wild Pokemon battles, especially if you know, for example, level up, I don't know, an Arcanine to level 50, and then you never use it again. That's like a whole bunch of levels that you never, you know, applied to the final game. And when I say final game, I mean final battles or whatever. For a while, I was thinking about using an Arcanine, but then I decided, maybe I'll switch to Magmar. Just sort of on a whim. And that's sort of what I'm doing at this point. Of course, at this point, I still don't know what my final party is going to be, so it's kind of up in the air. A little bit further back, me and my wife went to Los Angeles to hang out with her family for a little bit. And while we were there, I got myself some Lucas. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I'd honestly be kind of surprised if you did, Lucas is this Mexican candy, which I used to eat a lot when I was growing up. It's kind of a very loose... The definition of candy is very loose, is used very loosely here. the word candy is used very loosely here, because basically what Lucas is like chili powder and salt and sugar and like a few other flavorings and sand. Now when I say sand, I mean one of the ingredients is literally silicon dioxide. So that's a thing. But I've always loved this stuff. It's probably not very good for you, and I don't know, it's basically just kind of like eating salt and sugar, I guess. But yeah, that's what it is. When I last had it before this instance, there was like a... Well, okay, I should explain how many of these I got. What I got was basically a gross of them. If you know what a gross is, that's 12 squared, 144. So it's a fair amount. I don't know if it's exactly a gross. You know, it might be like 120 or something more even. But you know what I mean. It's quite a bit. I'm not going to turn around and count them right now because I don't care enough. But yeah, that's probably one of my favorite candies. I'm also a big fan of Warheads, but a while ago I kind of fell out of favor of eating them because I had too many, I guess. So now I'm okay with not having them for a while. The Warheads are still probably one of my favorite candies. I'm not really sure what else is in the running besides Lucas. I like a lot of chocolate stuff. Especially dark chocolate. That's my favorite kind of chocolate. But I'm open to all other kinds of chocolate as long as they don't have weird things in them like, you know, raspberries or weird filling. I'm okay with like nougat and caramel and peanut butter. And I think that's it for chocolate fillings. White chocolate is obviously still good. I know it's not real chocolate, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. And if you don't know, when I say it's not real chocolate, white chocolate is not actually made with, I forget what the thing is. Is it just cacao? Cocoa? It's not actually made with something. It's instead made with cocoa butter, which isn't quite the same thing as real chocolate, but you know, it's like what gives it a similar flavor. Alright, I'm getting tired of this. I'm gonna get out of here. So that was a pretty decent grinding. I don't think I'm done yet. I'm just pointing out that it was pretty decent grinding. I leveled up Jolteon enough so that it learned Pin Missile, which I think is a pretty cool move for it to have. It's one of those rare bug-type moves that, you know, actually does damage. And interestingly enough, it's learned by a non-bug-type Pokemon. Now I'm gonna go into the mansion, just you know, just for fun. And I'm gonna continue my grinding fest here. I think I'll talk about some other books I like. I'm remembering when I was talking about last episode when I was mentioning books. I was saying that I liked books by Gaiman and Pratchett, two of my favorite authors. Another of my favorite authors is probably a lot more obscure. Her name is C.J. Cherryh, and that's Cherry with an H at the end. Now, from what I understand, her name was actually Cherry without the H, but her publisher, or whoever was in charge, told her that she should add an H at the end, otherwise people would think that she writes romance novels. I don't know how effective or meaningful that was, but yeah. So that's at least interesting. So yeah, she's a science fiction writer, and probably my favorite science fiction writer, I think. I'm not sure, but I'm going to say so. Because one of the most thought-provoking books of hers and inspirational to me for my writing has been one of her books, actually one of her stories within a book. I always forget what its title is because it's, you know, in a collection of stories, and I get the titles of them all kind of mixed up sometimes, but I think the story was called Voyager in Night. I could be wrong about that. It's the one, if you happen to know, it's the one about these three people who get captured by aliens. I'll just leave it at that. And yeah, it's just very interesting. It's sort of it's very, I feel like Cherry is very good at evoking the image of a very alien. Most science fiction writers or science fiction movie directors or whatever. Oh, hey. I'm gonna catch this guy. Muck sludge. Thickly covered with a filthy, vile sludge, it is so toxic even its footprints contain poison. Does it have footprints, though? It doesn't seem to have feet. Anyway, so this is a sort of a fortunate bonus. I knew that Muck was in here, but I wasn't really expecting to run into him. So that's cool. Anyway, yeah, most science fiction writers and or show or movie makers, I feel, don't really do a good job of evoking a sense of an alien. Like, for example, consider Star Trek. You basically just have as the aliens people in rubber suits, or masks rather, you know, or even with the Vulcans, they just have weird ears and not much else. That have, you know, slightly different personalities, but overall they're still pretty much human, you know? I'm sure that that's not quite true, especially since I'm not a very big Star Trek fan, so I wouldn't know. But that's the impression I get, that they're just basically sort of weird humans. Whereas in the story I'm talking about with Cherry, the aliens don't come across as, you know, weird humans. They come across as actual alien beings whose motivations aren't quite clear. And I don't see a lot of that in science fiction, or in general, really. It's kind of sad, but, you know, that's just kind of how it is. This is actually even more egregious than some other science fiction that I have read. And to be fair, even in some of Cherry's writing herself. Like, she has aliens that, like, they are still pretty alien, but I always got the impression that they were humans in suits, even though it's, you know, a book and, you know, but, you know, they still look very humanoid. And I always found that kind of a weird thing to continue on to continue to have in a lot of science fiction. Most times, you know, the aliens look very humanoid. They just happen to evolve that way. And I can kind of see some arguments for that being a very useful way to evolve, but I don't think it should be necessarily the most common one. But you have much worse things in, like, say, Asimov's books, where the Martians are just basically humans. Like, as far as I remember, they just look like humans. And in fact, the humans and the Martians mistake each other for each other in some contexts. And it's like, what? Really? But, you know, what can you do with science fiction? There are a lot of weird tropes in science fiction, so you just kind of had to go with it, I guess. Alright. Let me think about this now. I don't really know how much I want to grind. I mean, I don't really want to grind much at all. I just sort of want some of my Pokemon to be, you know, pretty well off. Alright, I think I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna save it here. And I'm going to stop for now. Next episode, I'm gonna see about making some progress. I don't know if I'm gonna go to the gym yet, but we'll see.